Hey there, outliers. Niiamah is Shang here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey. Wow, we have together a really awesome roundtable of four incredible roundtables, four roundtables of roundtables, four incredible trailblazers and outliers who are all here to share their experience, not just their expertise, but like how they actually continue to navigate moving through life and up leveling themselves through the games that they're playing. All right. I want to make sure you all get a chance to get to know them. So why don't I bring these outliers in today? Greg, let's start with you. Do you mind letting us know more about you and the game you're playing?
Yes. So I'm Greg, and to answer the question, the game that I'm playing is changing a lot every day. Um, that's just probably the best game that I have, one that I enjoy the most, because if you think about it, if you get poured into, you pour into another cup, you have more that you end up getting on your end. So why not keep on funning that out, helping people learn something new, because shared knowledge is the best knowledge.
I like that. Thank you so much, Greg. Glad that you're here. Looking forward to playing with you. Harold, let's get to know you. Do you mind sharing more about you and the game you're playing?
Well, I'm in the cannabis industry right now, and I can't think of anything more dynamic than that. And I can honestly tell you my journey and where I've ended up after 12 years in professional cannabis was nowhere near where I thought it was. And so the biggest thing that I've learned from this whole thing is a quote from Picasso. He said, start with an idea, a vague idea. And if you're going into business, that I cannot tell anybody uh, that's better advice because it's not going to be concrete. It's not going to be what you think it is, but you're going to have to be able to be loose enough. I don't want to say loose enough. Your mind has to have enough elasticity to roll with it. And that's the thing that I've learned more than anything is and the second thing, if anything, is awareness of self.
I love this
And
here. Harold, like this is a cool way to get things started. I actually am going to be bringing in some more questions, I think, based on something you just said here. So thanks for playing, and I'm excited to see how your experience comes to the conversation. Appreciate you. Angela, let's get to know you a bit here. You mind sharing more about you and the game you're playing?
I think for 2025, my game is collaboration and strategic partnerships. As Greg said, shared knowledge is the best kind of knowledge. I love working with people. I love sharing and I love leveling up and watching other people level up. Like that just makes my heart sing.
Oh, glad that you're here, Angela. Looking forward to playing with you. I like some of you might remember Angela from a past session in 2024. So I'm glad to have you come back here and come play. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah. And Baruch, let's get to know you. Mind sharing more about you and the game you're playing?
I guess it's about moving from like knowledge to practicality to because it's easy to like build frameworks. What was that you called it? The outliers and
And the Trailblazers.
the trailblazers. So like the trailblazer side, it's like you're creating those categories for a reason because it's difficult to mend them because they're distinct in nature. So I guess about getting them into some sort of sync, some sort of dynamic as Greg mentioned. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. I love a good distinction. You're going to find out with me. I feel like that's where the power lies. Like if I talk to each of you about like what you know and the game that you're playing, the levels of distinctions you would have is part of why you would notice things differently than I would.
right.
Greg, I'm looking at you right now in a red shirt. I know that you do like things with like design and clothing. I'm like, he knows, like, I'm like, oh, that's just red. He's like, but like what kind of red is it? I could probably like lay that on way more. And that's different levels of mastery. Well, I'm excited for this conversation. Let's. There's something here, Harold. You brought in the Picasso quote, and if you can remind us what the quote is again in just a bit, I would really appreciate it. But I really enjoy this element of like the journey is nowhere near where you thought it would be. And so the first question I'm going to bring out to the entire roundtable here is to tell us about something in your journey right now where, like, tell us where you are right now in your journey when it comes to it, and tell us more about like where you thought it would be, and some of how you navigated the pivots, the turns, and such along the way. All right. I'll leave this as a question that's kind of like a little bit more open to get us started in it. And you know what, Harold, since you sparked this in me, would you mind getting us, kind of kicking us off on this?
Well, the thing about when there's two ways you enter business. One is that you're emulating something you saw that was very, very successful. And you think, well, I can do that. And, or better yet, I can do it better than what they're doing. The other thing is you're going into something that's new. And the thing that I encountered was when I went into cannabis, we had this expectations based upon activism, not so much business acumen or business. And the thing that as we came down this thing, things evolved. So what we found out quickly was there was nobody's shoulder to look over. And so therefore we had to make a lot of decisions and things we did strictly out of almost defensive matter. When we started out in Tennessee doing cannabinoids, we thought there was going to be infrastructure. There was folks that said that there would be infrastructure. The infrastructure went away. So we had to go, okay, if we can't have somebody process our stuff, then we have to learn how to process it ourselves. And so you have this evolution because as you go along in the process, one thing you learn the process, and then the second thing that you do is realizing, like you were talking about being in the moment. And I think it's really, really important about being in the moment on this and realizing, okay, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. And sometimes though, being in the moment is you're caught up in the moment. Like that's what I was saying here 10, 12 years later, we had no idea any of this was going to happen. We didn't. For one thing, our biggest underestimation was we thought in 12 years that the cannabis industry would be more mature. It's not. It's very dynamic. So that's one of the big things you learn.
Yeah,
You
appreciate
know,
that. Yeah, yeah. This is cool. Like, I'm hearing about the decisions being made, um, and the assumptions made that like as you're doing along the way, but still being able to be present to what's there. I appreciate that, Harold. Angela, Greg, Baruch, anything come to you on this one?
I'm just curious, in regards to cannabis itself, what what specifically do you think caused it not to evolve? Like it's had a moment, so what's stopping it? As you mentioned, it became a dynamic. Can you elaborate how that
well,
moment turned into a dynamic?
it's a bifurcated thing because like a lot of industries, it's the actual industry, the market demands, all the things that actually make up the framework of capitalism. Well, the thing that we found out was the start stops was with the regulatory environment. I mean, there was a whole bunch of things that we were supposed to have, like banking laws, schedule was going to be descheduled. All these things didn't happen. But meanwhile, this industry evolved. I mean, basically legal cannabis went from zero in 2012 to $30 billion industry in 2025. And all the things that happened with that. If we could just even think back about how the first days of the railroad, first 20 years of the railroad was absolute wild, wild west. Same thing with oil wells, all that. So the thing about it is, here you had no rules and greed, and this is how it's unfolded. And then on top of it, for a lot of people, cannabis is a cultural war. It is. It represents barbarians at the gate. And this is never more important because as you said, we went along really well, but in the last 2 years, and I'm not going to go down that road, we've had more pushback from the conservative part of our country, if that helps.
Right.
Harold,
Yes.
Dr. Angela here speaking and wondering, how have you put together sort of pros and cons? What are some of the decision-making processes how are you engaging with other people as you go through some of the pivots and the dynamics of a very young and, to your point, sometimes cultural, countercultural industry?
Listening. It's
Listening.
the most important thing you can do is listening and understanding human nature. No matter, because that's ultimately what we're talking about is dynamics between human beings. And that's why I said about the awareness that being able to empathize with the people that are either working for you, working with you, or you want to work for, is that to be able to understand how you can relate to them.
And Harold, do you have a vision for your scalability, like what your rate is or what this looks like for you 3 years, 5 years down the road?
No, because that's what this is the thing about it right now. When I say it's in its most dynamic period, we are literally waiting on the farm bill, the banking bill, the deschedulization of cannabis, and the fact that right now there's a war on hemp-derived cannabinoids, which is people making THC out of hemp. And all of this is going on right now and was supposed to have been the farm bill was supposed to have been done in 2023. It has been bumped down the road now 2 or 3 years. So in that environment, the only thing I can tell people is, like I said, know thyself and then patience, because this is one of the worst things that you can do is that, and I think people have this problem is I have to do something. And then sometimes it's not always you don't have to do. Sometimes you want to step back, step aside, and then just watch. And it's the hardest thing I can tell you, because I do with CEOs, especially younger ones, because the cannabis industry is a lot of young CEOs. And it's really hard sometimes to rein in that type A personality. And that's where part of it is in the business environment. Sometimes it's really is tough. You know that you deal with CEOs.
I was biting my tongue.
Well, what do you want to say to this, Angela? Go ahead and put it in.
Well, I wanted to actually ask a different question to the listening, which was a very good point, and thank you for calling out the importance of listening. But also, when making decisions, are we listening to the right people? So I'm curious to
Yes.
understand how you are listening and to whom you're listening. How are you finding those people to give that kind of input for those next steps?
And what I want to do here is actually open it up a bit to like so
Mhm.
that everyone can answer in on this one here. So like, and if you mind asking a question one more time, and then
I can
let's go
ask
from
that
there.
again and it can go out to all of us,
Yeah.
really.
I'm curious
As,
about the person making the clothing.
Yeah, me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
as you make decisions, right? We talk about volatile and complex marketplaces, and this applies right now to everybody. Um, how do you know who to listen to, right? There's advice, there's bias. How do you know when you take in that information? Listening is important, but discernment is also important. So as the CEOs of your organizations, as the leaders, even as the academic, there is an element of discernment. What do you use to guide yourself
Ooh,
in applying action to the information that you've taken in?
Dr.
uh,
Angela, I would honestly say that was a beautiful question. Just
yep.
Thank you.
wow. Um, I I can go ahead and just attack it to just try to open it up. I'm Greg. I would say discernment is one of the main things. And you answered your question within your own question. Having discernment, you can listen, you can observe, you can absorb, but once you get that deck of cards, you got to shuffle it. And once you shuffle it, you got to filter it. And once you filter it, you got to understand the dynamics of the play or the next steps that you get. For me, I'm a man of faith, so I do pray. And that's kind of what helps me out. It's pivotal. It's important because 10 months ago, I almost lost my life. So it changed everything from clothing, business, all of that. So basically just paying attention and understanding and knowing, what really works. In the clothing industry, everybody likes how a garment feels upon their skin, how it makes them feel, um, what type of warmth it gives, comfortability, presentation. They say if you look good, you do everything good. So having something that not only represents comfortability, but also just an importance of just embracing who you are. I always tell people it's like a higher quality of a garment meeting a higher quality of a calling. So it's just like motivating. But I would answer your question. Yes, discernment for sure. Paying attention, and also after getting that feedback, always asking a question: what is it that you felt from what it is that you just received? And what is it that we can put on the next thing to get you to receive that next?
Right. It's what you're saying about prayer at the beginning of your comment. Like with Harold, it's the listening, but he noted that it's first the problem that he's facing, the cannabis industry and such. And so being faced with the problem, now he's at the point where either he could go harder in, as he's saying, the younger CEOs, or as you're saying, prayer, which I think you're saying something deeper than just prayer. It's more like the reflection. It's like, okay, there's a roadblock here. Either I could push through that roadblock and, you know, gamble my energy forward, or it's like I could pull back and say, in a way, I'm not just a CEO. I'm not just a leader. I'm just a person that's gonna attend to whatever this makes me feel, and then I could return to that at some later date
Yeah.
with with a new framework.
Yeah. It's just like Harold said, you just learn in the process.
Yeah.
One thing I'm interested in, because we talked about the process of making the decision. One of the things I rarely ever see in business conferences or things like that is, okay, you're the CEO, you went out there, you got every bit of information you could get, you pulled the trigger, it was the wrong decision. One of the things I find hardest for CEOs, especially if they're the type A personalities, is for one thing, they made a mistake, which is hard to do. And then the other thing is that it's really hard. There's not always a solution. And I think that's one of the other things. Let's face it. When's the last time you went into a Blockbuster? That whole business concept came, made money, and then left. So if you're still were, 5 years after all the blockbusters are coming up, you were still trying to rent videos or DVDs, there was not a solution. And that's what I think one of the hardest things, especially in business now, is that to be able to go, okay, it didn't work, let's move on to the next thing. And
Oh,
it's one of the most important things that a CEO can do.
This is interesting that you bring this up here, Harold, because there's almost like two, it juxtaposes something that keeps coming up in these conversations, which is like the pivot or persevere, right? And like one of the hardest decisions we have had here, right? Because you talked just as you're talking about this element of like, hey, the moment has come, the market has moved, so on and so forth. There's you were also bringing up earlier where sometimes you just have to wait and not and like and rather than trying to do something. So I'm curious about like how you all have navigated some of those like those clear moments here. Um, yeah, it's really showing up in this space of like when when do you make the bet? It almost feels like there's one thing about making a decision, but there's another thing about making just the best informed, what's your best bad guess in this situation.
So can I can I hop in on an answer for
Yeah,
that?
please, Angela.
So my first degrees are engineering degrees. Um, and so when we talk about product development, we talk about continuous improvement, and continuous improvement will show a slow incline improvement a little bit at a time. We seldom aim to get something out the door 100% because it's not cost effective. you don't have the market feedback in order to truly get to what the market wants. However, we also talk about step function change, and that would be something that is significantly different, right? The example that you gave when we talk about moving from VHS tapes to CDs, DVDs, and now even streaming, right? Those were all step function changes, but in there was also the beta tapes. Do you remember the beta tapes?
Oh, yeah.
But the beta tapes were higher quality than the VHS, but they did not make it to market because they lost in the marketing game. They lost in the market capitalization. So even though you're better, sometimes there's speed to market that matters as well. So when we talk about where do you want to jump in on a technology, there is a lot to be said for first to market, capitalization, and then do you really absolutely have to be the best? In the case of VHS, we can show that you do not have to be the best quality. You simply have to be bigger than everybody else, right? Like more strategic in your development of relationships, of getting it to the market, of putting the content on those tapes, and then moving on. Now it's a streaming game, and all everybody is trying to do is say, right, there's nothing else that they need to worry about except my content, my content, my content. That's why you're seeing Stars do one thing, Paramount do another thing, Apple TV. Everybody is trying to have exclusive content, which forces people to have multiple subscriptions to get to that one particular content. That is no longer an improvement in an overall quality. That is a content market game, right? So understanding where your insertion point is along the product development, and then what are you delivering with that is critical to understanding where you need to jump in and with what sort of energy and volume and risk associated with how the market is moving. I don't
Jarboe
know
here.
if that's clear.
It is. And can I interject here?
Please.
And why that's so important is the product cycle is so much shorter now. People
Yes.
don't realize. I've seen products that come along in the first literally 18 months of the product. I'm talking about cannabinoids, where you were getting 5,000 a kilo. And then literally 24 minutes later, it's 1/10 of that. Because the product site, because this is the one thing about it. If you do come up with something successful, it is so much quicker in this present age to emulate, package, and get it out there. So it's, it really is. If you can't be first, don't count on being best to save you,
If
because
you
it
don't,
may not.
if you don't mind, I want to push back a drop in terms of like production. The If we look at the production as a linear like assembly line, where we already know the end result, then that makes sense. Like the example of the blockbuster, right? So we could say, okay, it's moving from like in store to streaming, but there's so many little details that were omitted in that process. Like now we're going a little bit back to that. So it could have been that Blockbuster could have pivoted without going into streaming, where they made it into a store that felt more like a third place, or there's so many different directions that could have been placed upon it that that didn't go against the change of streaming.
Yeah, yeah. I would say I agree because I know Niiamah said earlier the difference between, persevering or being pivotal. And all of you all touched up on different areas of like getting into the market or making sure that the prices change or don't change or making sure you're dishing out whatever. If you think about it, everybody had what was it? Yeah, Blockbuster. And the next thing you know, it turned into those little kiosk outside of Walgreens. And
Yeah.
then next thing you know, boom,
Redbox.
it's yeah, see, Redbox, we know about it. And then now we're streaming and now it's very exclusive movies that happens just to be on only just like Dr. Angela said, on specific subscription stream. So I really think it was more so of a time of patience. But in the patience of actually persevering to that goal, there were different areas and moments where they have to, be more pivotal and end up sitting, still getting to that goal and that outcome.
There's something that's playing out here. I appreciate this conversation because I think that in the context of business and outliers and trailblazers, like we're working in um, like it's just like there's two parts. And Angela, you talk about the VUCA environments that's here, right? But I hear what you're saying, Harold, about like the product cycle being so much shorter. It's like there's less room to capture the gains of what you've created without other people coming in as well on it. And I think this is an interesting place for the listeners of this in particular because one element of it is like we pride ourselves on being able to do things differently, right? But what's really seems to be happening is that there's a compression of like being able to do something different and then being able to quickly be able to not only replicate it but also do it better. Like I don't think that it's interesting that we have Blockbuster in place. I think Blockbuster Netflix. That's when I go to that thing. But the two of them, I don't think that the two of them at that starting point would have said like, oh yeah, and in 10, 15 years we're all like the whole cable industry is going to be changed and this is how people are going to try and consume their information. Howard, almost to your point when you first started where you're like I would not have guessed where we are. So I'm gonna just kind of go back into this element of like the decision making process that you all go through, as well as like the choice. I like this because it feels like there's a general feeling of uncertainty right now, at least in the US. It's like this uncertainty. So I'm really curious about how do you all leverage uncertain times to your advantage?
Damn,
Honestly,
that's a good question.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would honestly say I love moments like that. But when I was in school, I played sports. I played two sports: basketball, ran track. I'm Greg again, by the way. So it was more so like that nervousness, like man, this is the first game again. But it was just like it was a pushback of adversity. But at that time, it's kind of like you're hitting a threshold. Why not push through it? That's an opportunity for you to learn something better, get better at something. Whether it's with engineering, you didn't understand market. Oh, I guess that means I'm about to learn how to do more content. Somebody came in and thought of my idea of cannabis. Guess what? I'm coming up with a new one. It's kind of just like that way to when your back is against the ropes and you might be in the ring with Muhammad Ali. You might have to weave and bob instead of bob and weave, and you're learning something new. But it's still a battle that if keep on putting your best foot forward, it can be overcome. That's just my take on,
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Thanks for that, Greg. I appreciate
Greg,
it.
I'd love to talk to you about, okay, because one of the big things in our business is customer receptivity. And how do you get an idea of where you think, especially because you're doing fashion, and fashion, you almost have to anticipate what the market's going to be because by the time, like you said, you get it there, if you guess wrong, well, they've moved on to something else. So what is it that you're using to try to anticipate customer wants and needs?
um, Man, that's a great question. So I've had my time where I worked in the clothing industry. Like I've worked at Finish Line, JD Sports, and everything like that. And I've asked small questions even before I started my business, like how do y'all get the jump? They always stay 3 to 9 months in advance. I know with any course of a business, staying up to date quarterly is the best thing. And also making sure you understand the traction of, what did good this quarter, that quarter. Okay, it might did good in the fall quarter. Well, I know what I can go back to in the fall. It's always going to do that. So I would honestly say just making sure that I'm doing certain things for customers that I would always want for myself. And that even goes back to a more holistic approach of how is it that you like to be talked to? Is it that you like to be engaged? How is it that when you go into, McDonald's, Starbucks, whatever, did you just have a great experience? If you didn't, take note of that. Apply it to your own business. And how can I make sure that they're having a great experience with me? Because yes, quality is good, but quantity is even better. You know, you always have that same customer coming back, whether it's in the cannabis business. You know, Sammy, Sally, whatever her name might be, she is going to come back because she had a great experience. So just adaptability always.
I would jump in and also encourage a focus on values. So values-based selling. So I don't know much about your business, but hearing you speak, Greg, I could imagine that selling a message along with your clothing, right? Like you say that the clothes make the man. We hear that phrase quite a bit, and there is truth to that because that's how we choose to present ourselves to the world. And that means alignment with certain values. I was shopping with my son and he's like, Mom, I don't listen to this type of music, so I can't wear those shoes.
All
And
right.
that was his statement. I didn't know those shoes were associated with whatever music, right? Like, but that's his age group and he is aware of what's happening. And so there's association in particular with making people are voting socially with their dollars. And so understanding what that message is for your organization, who you are, clearly aligning to the needs and the purposes, but also the messages that your clients, your customers are pulling into. That that's the future for the repeat, for the comeback, for the community that you're building. And I think based on what I'm hearing both Harold and Greg say, you're building community with your products.
It's a slow and tedious process. And that's
Fair.
one of the things, since we deal with CEOs, the people that I know as CEOs, one of the most perplexing thing is how do I spend my marketing dollars? Right now, it seems to be, is it an influencer? Am I, am I going to do just strictly, and I don't even know, Twitch, TikTok, all those things, or am I going to try to do niche driven marketing, basically algorithm driven and just, hit my sweet spots. But once you do that, then you're saying, this is my demographic. And that's the hardest thing when I talk to these people. It's like, oh, what's your demographic? Well, I appeal to everyone. No, you wish you appeal to everyone, but and it is, and it's for us. Like we have a limited amount of marketing dollars. What at this point in time is the most effective use of trying to to uh, to convey your narrative to new people?
Right.
I
Could
just
I
saw an
chime?
article,
Go ahead.
or I didn't even read it. I just saw the headline, but it stuck out for me. It was about this like chef or whatever who had a TikTok related post that ruined his like his standing as a chef, right? And I just thought about it. Like I was like, you don't hear all the chefs like telling us how great, the TikTok influencers are for their business, which they are. But like when it turns out to be bad because, it's a game either way, which how the audience is going to receive that, as you're saying, Angela, the value based position. It could go either way. So when Greg says that he has to keep real focus on each season and being receptive, if he places a strong value one way and then the season for whatever reason goes the other way, then he can't pivot because then he'll alienate the season before and so on and so forth. So I just think that it has to be, it's like a careful line. I'm wondering if anybody has an idea of how to track that.
It's
Yeah, I was actually going to chime in right there, because it's actually going to, go into my question. My to answer that is like, yes, it is in fact a thin line because you have to. It's like skating on thin ice and there's eggshells right under that. Like it's very strenuous because the reason that I'm saying that is because to my question to kind of help out like the trailblazers and stuff, how did everybody here, especially connecting to heroes about demographics and stuff like that and understanding the wave, the culture, the generation, how did everybody sit and function and focus on engaging with their own target audience? Like, how did you know, like, I've tried so many times and I found my group and I was able to start finding that value and pouring in, or I was able to connect with that season and start always rotating, or like, so how did y'all know that y'all found your target audience, and like, how did you go through that process?
Analytics. Jarboe here. No, I'm serious. That's the one joyful thing, because I'm not an SNS guy. Social network sites I don't like. But one of the things about it is you can go in there and it tells you everything you need to know. Like, okay, I can tell you about myself. I cannot hardly connect between anybody between the ages of 18 and 28. My numbers right there peg around 8%. But since I'm an older gentleman, I'm creeping up on 70. You look and see where a sweet spot of my demographics are, and for some unknown reason, one of my highest is women between the ages of 56 and 64. Now, I, do I really able to come in and pinpoint why that is? But once you realize that, then that's going to dictate to you about where and how you message. It's just like with us. Okay. If I want to reach anybody over the age of 40, it's Facebook. Anybody under the age of 40, it's Instagram. Anybody under the age of 24, it's TikTok. But that's one of the things that you have to do is to come in, and that is the joyful thing about the digital marketing and stuff, is get in there and see. And then I know this is also kind of dumb. I will hang out in the stores where my products are sold.
Yes,
Why
it's
would
a good way.
real quick? Why would that be? Why would that be dumb based on your language? I'm curious about that.
What
It
do you
feels like
mean?
it'd be really great. Was
It's a
that
great way.
yeah
Great
to
way.
actually be where the people are.
Well,
Yeah.
but dude, so many people don't do that. I
Mm.
cannot tell you how many people. I said, well, who's buying your product? And like I said, invariably, everybody. No, they aren't. And that's the hardest part, is trying to find that what do you call it, sweet spot in the demo. And it's hard.
I'm loving this. I'm going to wrap in a bit here. Angela, it looks like you wanted to say something on this. Was that correct here or not?
I would just say, I was jokingly saying I could probably answer him why that demographic is responding to his product. So that might be an offline conversation.
I like this. I always encourage additional conversations here. What I'm going to do is I like to say thank you, because this ended up being a very helpful conversation. Some of the questions you were asking, I was answered for myself, even though I didn't put into the conversation itself. But I took down things like, what are you doing? What are you using to try and anticipate customers' wants and needs? How do I spend my marketing dollars? What is the most effective use of my money right now? How do we navigate product cycles, given the barriers to entries are less than they've ever been beforehand, right? And the margin and the time to capitalize on it, is less. How do we continue to make sound decisions in an ever changing environment, whether it's regulatory, whether it's like product, there's just constant shifts here. And I like this last question that we ended up here on, because like Howard, you brought in data. And what I feel about that, I think it's kind of like a two-sided elements of it. It's just like, we got to take action enough to get some data to do something, and then from it, the what I heard from you, Harold, was like, who your demographic, who you go after, actually reveal themselves, but you have to be looking for it and you got to be paying attention to it. And then once that comes in, you continue to meet them where they happen, where they are. Let me make sure that before I wrap up on that here, Howard, because I don't want to put words in your mouth. Does that feel like it's in alignment with what you were saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I'd like to share outliers for anyone out here that's trying to figure out, like, essentially this came to, like, stop trying to predict the future, like, be where you are in the moment, take appropriate action, make sure to pause and review the actions and the results of what you have, and put yourself in a position to continue getting what you can from the moment that's at hand. I'm going to put that in. I feel like that kind of like ties through a lot of what we talked about today. Well, I want to thank each of you here. Outliers, my ask of you is in this conversation, there's something in here that was very useful for you and likely for someone else in your life. If you can, take the time to think of that individual and send them this episode and let them know that you were thinking specifically of them for it. Let them know, like, hey, the conversation that was had here actually talks to a lot of what we were talking about the other day. And so I wanted you to take a listen to it. There's something here about sharing this with everyone out in the world, but almost to your point around the data, it's like this thing will really reach the people who it's supposed to reach through, I feel like through targeted invitations. So thank you very much on that. And if you want to share it on your larger platforms, it would be very, very useful as well. So with this, let's end here. We're gonna go. I like to end each conversation with each of you sharing your contact information, like the way that people can go deeper down the journey with you, your best one, and if there was an insight you got from this conversation, what that insight was. So this is not about them. This is about you. Angela, we'll start with you. Can you let us know the best way down the journey with you, and what insight, if any, did you get from this convo? And we'll go around. We'll keep this part fairly brief, and then we'll wrap up for today.
Sure. You can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. And the best way to reach me is angela.buckley@creativelyefficient.com. What I really appreciated listening to Harold's lead off question was start in the fog, right? I have a teenager who's graduating high school this year, and so he wants to have all the answers and he doesn't understand that part of growing is not knowing what the next step is going to reveal. And so I appreciated hearing that quote, and I think I'm going to be taking that back home and putting it to good use today. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Glad you were here. Greg, we'll come to you.
I'm Greg. You can find me on all social media platforms at Underrated Styles, or even info.underratedstyles.com, and style is spelled Stylz. I would say the things that I enjoyed the most, I really enjoyed everybody because I'm a visual learner, but I'm also a man of perspective. So seeing everybody's perspective of how they see the world, view the world, how they uphold themselves in their business, into their corporation, and basically share their own wisdom, it was very impactful. Like I was over here taking notes mentally. If I was able to have pen and pad, I would be taking notes on everybody because I was like, I'm gonna go study that. I'm probably gonna play this video back myself just so I can take some notes. So thank y'all so much. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for being here. Baruch, you?
Yeah, the diversity, the diversity of opinion, the diversity of position. And I like the setup of, like, the people in the company and then the people viewing it from afar. So it showed that there's more work to be done in understanding these complicated issues. And you could find me on Substack, Baruch Menache.
Thank you. And Harold, why don't you bring us home here?
All right. Well, you can reach me. For one thing, I have a podcast called Full Contact Cannabis. It's on Podbean and all the places. You can reach me at HL Jarboe, and that's Jarboe at Comcast.net. And anytime that you can bring people together and that there's really discourse and people can exchange idea, that's a good thing. And I applaud you for doing that, sir. We need more of it. That's one of the probably the things that more and more people are islands unto themselves. And the more that you can, let's face it, I like being the dumbest person in the room whenever possible.
Hmm.
And and
A lot of people nodding their heads here, Harold.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the part of it. So that it is. But the biggest thing into the that if I can leave with anybody, and once again, this is one of those cliche things. Every great journey starts with a single step. And that is the most important thing. And all the people here will agree with that. It is that deciding I'm going to do it. Now, the journey will reveal itself, but it will never reveal itself if you don't start it.
There we have it. Harold, thank you for bringing it. All of you, just want to say thank you for this conversation. You've gotten me thinking, and I know that Outliers and Trailblazers are going to benefit as well. To all of you, until the next time we talk, be you on purpose. Journey on.